name is Arianna Vitali, and I'm Secretary General at the Coalition for Energy Savings. And today I'm here with distinguished guests, and I would like to discuss in this next hour a session that is entitled Long-Term Solutions for Industrial Policies, the Energy Efficiency Ecosystem. What I would like to discuss with you in the next hour is actually to understand how energy efficiency industry can be helped to thrive and be considered as a strategic asset for the EU in terms of economic growth and in terms of competitiveness. EU industrial policy has considerably advanced under this Commission's mandate, and we imagine that also it will remain a top priorities for the next EU institutions, but also as stakeholders active on the energy efficiency field, we sometimes have the impression that more could have been done actually to recognize the full role of the energy efficient industrial ecosystem as its potential to decarbonize Europe. So in the next hour, we are going to discuss these and many other topics, and here a wonderful lineup of speakers. First, I would like to introduce, even if it doesn't need introduction probably, Brian Matherway, who's the head of the Office of the Energy Efficiency and Energy Transitions at the Industrial Energy Agency. Thank you for joining us. He will deliver a keynote speech to start the session. And then we will have, I hope, a very lively and interactive discussion with the remaining of our speakers. We have here Giulia Del Brenna. Giulia is head of unit in the unit Strategy and Regulation, Single Market and Industrial Policy, and also Deputy Director at DG GROW in the European Commission. Thanks for joining. And we have here as well Radoš Horacek, who's team leader for the energy efficiency policy and implementation at DG Energy in the European Commission. And finally, here at my right, Jakob Friedrich, senior economist at Cambridge Econometrics. So thank you for joining, and be ready to ask questions, as I really would like to have an interaction, an interactive section. But to start off, I would like to give the floor to Brian for his key address. And the floor is yours to set the scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Arianna. Thanks to you and to Luigi and of course to Monica for the invitation to be here today. It's very nice. And I can tell you, I left the first autumn rain of Paris to be with you in Brussels. So it's actually worse in Paris than it is in Brussels today, which is rare, I have to say, but it's nice to be here. And it's nice to catch up with a lot of people I haven't seen for a long time. So thank you. You can hear me okay? Yeah. Good. So this is going to be a really interesting topic, and I'm really looking forward to hear these perspectives. I wanted to just take a few minutes to set the scene in a wider context before I comment on the specific dimension of industrial policy, which I think is really interesting, because we look at this in a global perspective, and this question of where Europe fits in the global landscape is a really key question right now. And we're looking at the momentum we're seeing around questions around clean energy transitions, energy efficiency specifically globally, and the challenges and the opportunities that creates for every region, but today focusing on Europe. And I want to talk first of all about the political momentum we're seeing, because we are seeing some really interesting opportunities on the political sphere in the last few months, and particularly looking towards COP this year for clean energy and energy efficiency specifically. And to explain that, I want to tell you that we track energy efficiency progress globally, and we do this by measuring how much energy it takes to power an economy, which is energy intensity. So how much value in GDP terms do you get from every unit of energy you use? And the world becomes gradually more efficient. Each year, by a couple of percent, we get more value from the energy we use, and that's been a curve that's snaking its way upwards over some decades, but it has accelerated a little bit recently, but it needs to accelerate more. When we look at our net zero model looking out to 2050, this decade, between now and 2030, there are three key things that would really make the fundamental difference between success and failure all the way out to 2050. And that's our progress on renewables, our progress on methane reduction, and our progress on energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is really vital, not just because of the huge emissions reduction potential it holds between now and 2030, but because it makes everything else cheaper and more feasible. Because the more efficient your economy is, the less you need to build out wires, the less solar panels you need to invest in, the less hydrogen you need to invest in. So energy efficiency really is the first most crucial step, particularly in this decade. And that's why one of the actions we're calling for right now from governments, as well as a tripling of renewable capacity by 2030, is a doubling of energy efficiency progress by 2030. And that's what I'm showing you here. Can this be done? Well, it's doubling, right? So it's hard. If it was easy, I wouldn't waste my time calling for it. It's not going to happen by itself. It's going to take a lot of work by governments and industry and all stakeholders. But it's not a question of the doubling is way out there. It's a question of doing it consistently, because what we find is this is looking at 150 countries across the world for the last decade. Most countries have hit the doubling rate at least once, and half of all countries have hit the doubling rate at least 3 times in the last decade. So countries have proven themselves capable of delivering on this, but nobody has done it steadily. No country has achieved an ongoing average of more than about 3%. Most countries are more like 1.5%. We're talking about 4% or more to double. So it is a stretch target, but it can be done. And the reason it can be done is twofold. First of all, the technologies exist. I could show you many examples, but let me just show you air conditioners. This is brand new data we just collected from exactly what air conditioners are on sale in different parts of the world. And the dotted line tells you the kind of level of efficiency they need to be to hit the 2030 doubling target. And you can see from the bars that in most regions, those devices are already for sale. Now, the average devices are a lot less efficient, and there's a lot less efficient equipment for sale, and that's what people are buying. But the ones that are needed to deliver that target are available. Sometimes more expensive, but often they're not. These are market questions, but they're also policy questions. Good regulation, good standards, good labeling, good consumer information can we really help consumers pick the right devices that are not only no more expensive to buy, but then can save literally thousands of euros equivalent over their lifetime because they use less electricity to run. So the technologies are there already. Equally, the policies are there. I could assemble a different set of policies, but the question here is, if you look at the best policy in any given category today, and if you said if every country did all of this, we would hit doubling tomorrow. That's the point. And I chose these to be diverse. So I probably could have put Europe in several of these categories, to be honest, and because Europe is quite well ahead in all categories, but not all. Europe has plenty you can still do. But around the world, there are examples. You could literally pick any sector, any subsector, any technology. Somebody has a policy that is capable of delivering the doubling for that niche. And if you put it all together, doubling can happen. So the technologies are there, the policies are there. Now, I don't underestimate the challenge to government and industry in putting all this in place in the next 6 or 7 years, which is what it is, 70-something months, I think. The amount of action that's required in terms of rolling out new standards, new incentives, all of that kind of thing is really strong. So and most governments just maybe not simply have the capacity to do that today. They literally don't have enough people working on the topic to deliver all that's needed. So 2 things. First of all, we are helping governments understand how they can build on what they have. So if lots of governments, for instance, have lighting standards, but they're often very poor. So start there, quadruple the standard you have in lighting. You've already got the rules in place, you've got enforcement in place, you've got monitoring in place, much quicker, easier and cheaper than starting from scratch with some area that you don't have, which you may need to get to, but it may not be your first port of call. The second thing that's really required now is the political will, because we're talking about applying more prioritization, literally more staff to the energy efficiency department of the ministry. You need political leadership, you need political will. And that's why what's happening right now on the journey to COP is really important. And I want you to understand this is quite a historic moment, that coming out of COP in just a couple of months' time in the energy package, one of the key deliverables of COP28 in Dubai in 2023 could be a global commitment to double energy efficiency progress by the end of the decade. We work in energy efficiency. We don't normally get invited to those dinners where the main issues. Energy efficiency has a chance to be at the center of the outcome of the COP this year in a way that would then feed back to governments that would deliver the kind of political prioritization and push that I think we really need, and that certainly our evidence shows can be done. And we know that governments are interested. Some of you were with us in Versailles just a few weeks ago when we held our 8th annual global conference on energy efficiency. I want to thank Schneider Electric, who are our partner there, and equally Danfoss, who are our partner at the previous conference. 46 governments agreed to an outcome at Versailles. We call it the Versailles Statement, not to be grand, where they would aim to work together to collectively deliver a doubling of energy efficiency progress by 2030. And the reason I wanted to just take a minute to show you all the names is this is not just France and Denmark and Singapore. This is countries from every continent, all kinds of countries in terms of their economic development, in terms of their resource base, in terms of their political prioritization. So I really think we have an opportunity. But one of the reasons I've spent the time on this today is to say to you, this will not happen by itself. And everybody here might be able to help, because we have set just a few weeks now before COP. And when I talk to governments, which I do every day about this, the most common answer I get when I ask how things are going is, everything's fine. We're on board with all these targets, but if it comes to the crunch, my minister is a bit more excited by the renewables one. So if we run out of discussion time, or we have to pick one or the other, we're not against efficiency, but we're just not as excited by it. So we could see this golden once in a decade opportunity slip by because nobody's quite excited enough by energy efficiency. So I really want to ask you, if you have your minister on WhatsApp, if your company is involved in COP, if you have any influence to bring to bear here, if you want to make a public statement pointing out that a doubling target for efficiency is a good thing for governments, for the planet, for citizens, for industry, now is the time to do it. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, please do. And having said that, I am cautiously optimistic. I think this is very doable, and I think this really is a golden year, building on Versailles, looking towards COP. And I do want to say as well that the European Commission has taken great leadership in this, and President von der Leyen is a personal champion of the doubling and tripling target. And I think that's really making a real political difference right now, and could really clinch it. If this goes through, or even if it takes a bit longer than COP28 or whatever else, energy efficiency has a momentum behind it now, which I think is quite rare and quite unprecedented. And that brings me to talk about the industrial dimensions and the industrial opportunities for Europe. And it starts from a negative, because it's been a very tough year for many businesses in Europe in terms of energy prices. If you look at across Europe, the most energy intensive sectors and the bills, and even very small companies with relatively unintensive operations, the energy bills have been very crippling in the last year or two. And some of the demand reduction we saw in 2022 was not energy efficiency. It was, as we heard earlier from our MEP colleague, it was people going cold, or factories going to 4-day weeks, or other things like that. And it's not a desirable outcome. And even now that prices have come down considerably, for most businesses in Europe, gas prices are 4 to 5 times higher than they are in the US. So there's a real competitiveness question here for Europe to think about, where is its place in a new world in terms of energy security and energy prices. I won't dwell on that, because I mentioned that Europe was very, very successful and deserves praise for how it managed to reduce its fossil fuel dependence in 2022, particularly in gas. Some of it was very positive policy developments around energy efficiency. Consumers really responded to information campaigns. They turned down their thermostats, they changed their behavior. Businesses invested in efficiency, homes invested in efficiency, but also people made sacrifices that we don't expect them or want them to continue to make. Storage levels are very high now in European gas, which is great. It really makes us more secure for this winter, but not totally secure. A very cold winter, other shocks, a rapid increase in demand and energy in China, all of these perturbations could really put us back into an energy security crisis in Europe, despite the great progress we have made. Sorry, I said I'd get positive. Energy efficiency is a massive opportunity for Europe. It's got the kind of industry and strengths and competitiveness advantage around technology, around innovation, around advanced business models, around leadership globally, that are really called for now as we look at the stronger focus on clean energy and energy efficiency in particular. And in the coming decades, last year, for the first time ever, across all the people employed in the world in the energy sector, clean energy overtook traditional energy. There are now more people employed around the world in clean energy than there are in fossil fuels, and that's only going to grow. And between now and 2030, never mind 2050, energy efficiency is going to create somewhere between 3 and 7 million jobs, depending on how fast we go in progress. So there's a real opportunity for the world here, and particularly for Europe. And I think one area I just really want to highlight is around digital smart technology. I think Europe has a real competitive edge here, and I think as we look at electrification and combined with decarbonisation, combined with a focus on efficiency, all enabled by digital technology, we're seeing a revolution in how we think about energy efficiency. In many parts of the world now, it's become completely irrelevant how much energy a washing machine uses over the course of a year. What really matters is what it uses on a given day, or can that be flexed in terms of at noon, power is free and cheap and available. 4 hours later, it's really expensive and dirty. And can demand respond to that kind of dynamics that variable renewables are creating in markets? And can we think about systems optimization and efficiency rather than end use efficiency? It's a challenge to governors, to regulators, and to policymakers, but I see them responding really well, including here in Europe at Brussels level and at member state level. So I just want to identify this as one key opportunity where I think there's really global opportunities for European businesses, and some of them are actually here in the room. But energy efficiency across the board, this is my message. We're moving in, I am convinced, into a golden era for energy efficiency, and therefore a golden business opportunity for energy efficiency. And I hope that maybe working together, we can capture some of that for Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brian, for this very inspiring speech. I think I take, there will be many points to take about what you just mentioned, but I think one key message is that doubling energy efficiency progress worldwide and in Europe is needed, but also it's possible and achievable. Also because the technologies are already on the market and we do not need to invent new ones, and this will bring additional benefits to the society, including job creation. And particularly on this point of job creation, I wanted to start my question by asking to hear Julia from DG Grow. We have seen here that clearly energy efficiency and efficiency technology are major drivers for job creation and competitiveness. Can you maybe tell us a bit more of how the European Commission and in particular DG Grow are supporting energy efficiency industry to develop and to maintain their competitiveness in that framework? And maybe also to give us a hint about the Net Zero Industry Act. Is this enough to provide support for the energy efficiency industry and the energy efficiency industry ecosystem? Are those industry have been valorized enough? I'm trying to be diplomat when I'm a moderator.
I will have to be as well. I hope it is working. So thank you very much for inviting me. I do not belong to the energy efficiency or energy crowd, but I live with industrial policy, and there cannot be any industry without green, affordable, and abundant energy. So I like very much what you said, but it's not how much energy you use, but how you use it importantly. And I would add also that in practice, it's not so much the energy prices that are important, but the energy cost for all of us. It's economic operators and also administrations. That's why we've been working a lot on, let's say, more bold and assertive industrial policy. First, because of the shock of the COVID crisis, where basically the single market broke down. All businesses. And then we began to have a number of problems, even before the Russian aggression of Ukraine, with the economic recovery. Economic recovery after COVID was an extremely pleasant surprise because it was fast, and it also reassured that the measures that have been taken in Europe have been good measures to sustain the industry for lockdown period the industry. But it was in a way tough, and it brought the first rise in energy prices, and therefore cost. And that really just confirmed the date of the position that the grid was important, and about an energy policy that was sustainable in order to spend sustainability, green, obviously, but also social and also resilient and digital was the way to go. You have a great and important role to play in the digital green and resilience transitions, because in fact, it's not a twin transition, it's whatever a triplet transition, because resilience is there. And obviously for green it's quite obvious and it was everywhere, but also for affordability and abundance. Now, it was said before, I liked it, as you said, it's not so sexy as renewables, it's like a single market. Marimonti always, when he gets, if you heard ever Marimonti talking about single market, he always said, so boring. I don't like it, it's my job. It's his job as well, it was for a long time. And I wouldn't say it's boring, but it's not. And when you do something that is so important, single market for energy efficiency, but it's not sexy, like big flashes in industrial policy are more sexy, and I deal with both, so I know. But still, there is no industrial policy without single market. There is no energy policy without energy efficiency. And as it is my job every day to remind people that not a single market, you have to do the same. It's very high on the political agenda. We have now started the green transition dialogues at a very high level. All of you must know that we've been working with transition pathways where energy efficiency is extremely important for a while, but it was at technical level. Now it's at a very high political level, so that's very important side. But it is our collective duty to always underline that you are a tool to back and you're a tool for NZIA. So NZIA is a very innovative industrial policy instrument because it lists a series of technologies. You all know them. That's not usual. We tend to be technology neutral in the European Commission for good reason. Perhaps it would be a once in a lifetime, but because there is urgency. There is urgency to advance fast in certain sectors. And again, you're wrong. Where are we with NZIA? There will be a vote in the plenary of the parliament in November. I wrote it down somewhere in November. So soon, yes, November, we will have a parliament mandate. We will have a council mandate. So that's important for the proposal, but it's also important for your constituency to see where the priorities of member states and parliament lie. So I always encourage people to read this mandate because there is a lot of interesting information, and I think very wrong.
No, maybe just a follow-up question, because you talked about the importance of energy efficiency industries to make the transition cheap. And of course, you mentioned that are necessary to grow, but talking back to the NZIA, I mean, there were, in the EU industrial strategy, there were 14 ecosystems that were highlighted, and energy efficiency was not one of those. Of course, we are very happy that the renewables friends had an ecosystem on their own, but as the transition goes hand in hand, and without saying whether one is more sexy than another, I think it would have been great to see the same level of recognition. So maybe why is the case? Can you tell us a bit more?
So first of all, just a comment, you said cheap. I would say I like to use affordable because cheap is not always good. Huh? When it's so cheap, we use in whatever way. So affordable is the right. It's in my mind. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that affordability is important because it's linked to competitiveness, but also rational use of resources. So the discussion on ecosystems was a long one, a very political one, and choices had to be made. Okay, I'm not going to dwell into that, but you are, and I can continue with my knowledge of the single market, you are everywhere. So it's a bit more difficult to single out. We believe, obviously it's my job to say you what we believe, but I actually believe that the ecosystem initiative is an interesting one, but it's a new one. So I think there is a good balance there, but continue to to voice your disappointment if you think so, but you are mainstream. You are de facto mainstream.
And Brian, before I go to the other panelists, so we have heard how the EU supporting energy efficient industry.
And secondly, the spending of money has become a central instrument in a way that maybe it wasn't before. Personally, I'm not an economist, but I kind of see the merits of both of those. I see the effectiveness right now in the US. I think energy efficiency, sometimes we spend a lot of time tying ourselves in knots over how to address theoretical problems that actually, to be honest, can be cut through like a Gordian knot with a few euros, whether it's for industry or for households, whatever else. You can get over market barriers, you can build scale in markets by spending some money. In terms of subsidies and that, and I think we see success in that area, whether it's in electric vehicles, heat pumps, retrofit of homes. That's one point. But while this debate has really risen in the last year or two, the use of energy efficiency as a enterprise and trade opportunity is decades old. We've been working quite a bit with Thailand recently, who have become a leader in that region in white goods because they set very high efficiency standards, which then make their domestic manufacturers the best in the region. And then as another country catches up and raises its standards, the Thai manufacturers have an immediate head start because they're already manufacturing at that level. Japan has been doing that since the 70s through the Top Runner program, where all of its appliances have been driven towards the highest level. And now Japan has world market share because through domestic policy, the manufacturers were driven to making better appliances, which now, and they have a reputation for that, and they have the market share. So I think it's proven a very successful strategy in many places.
Thank you for that. So it's clear that the EU is doing a part of the job. We are not alone in that, and there are countries that actually are showcasing best practices on how to support the energy efficiency industrial ecosystem. I'm turning now to Radoš. Thanks for joining us, coming directly from DG Energy. So, as you all might know, the Energy Efficiency Directive just entered into force 2 days ago. We are very pleased about that. And I wanted, now is really time to start on with implementation. That will be a crucial tool to ensure that the EU meets its Dublin goal. So maybe Radoš, can you tell us about a bit more of what are the key elements that will contribute to the EU progress on the sectors, but also from an implementation perspective, what are the challenges that you see coming, and especially how we can support the industrial sector as well to be an active player in the implementation process?
Thank you, of course. I mean, you have seen the EED. As Ariana said, it entered into force 2 days ago. It will have another 2 years to be transposed into the member states' legislation because it's a directive. So you will start seeing its effects, I would say, on the go. There are already some of the member states which are becoming very, very ambitious. Germany already has a transposition law which is ongoing. France has a transposition process, putting the law as we speak, putting the EED into their national law as we speak. So we are not lacking actually ambitious member states, and we are not lacking ambition among those ones who are going to transpose and to implement the provisions of the EED. You might have seen there that we have a dramatic increase in the targets, something that goes in line with what Brian was speaking about. There is an 11.7% increase in energy efficiency, But the interesting thing is what is this 11.7% off? Yeah, it's above of what was expected with all the existing measures. So with the existing EED in 2020 for 2030. So in 2020, we already expected the energy consumption to go down. Well, now we have a target that will go even further down, and that by 11.7%. We have a massive increase in the main measures that are supporting those targets. First of them being the energy efficiency obligation scheme that obliges the member states to introduce measures, to introduce funding and other measures that will increase by 2030 from what is 0.8% of savings. That means almost 1%. It will increase it to 1.9%, more than doubling by 2030. That means every year the member states will have to have measures that will save almost 2% of the final energy consumption. That is huge, and they will need. And they're desperately looking for any sort of measures that can do it. And they'll be asking probably the industry, they'll be asking the housing sector, they'll be asking the transport sector to help them deliver on that. I mean, if every previous speaker made an appeal, if I might make an appeal on you in that would be go to your ministries, go to your energy agencies and propose them solutions because they are desperately looking for them. If you as an industry, you are able to diminish the diminish your energy consumption by something like 2%, you will be making them, and now I speak annually, you will be making your member states and happy, and you will make the implementation and the transposition of the directive a real thing.
Thank you. So I think all of us have some homeworks to do to answer to the Radosh's appeal. And with that, I'd like also to turn to take a pause on this very interesting discussion and to turn to our last speaker, Jakov. If you want
Yes.
to do the presentation. Jakov is from Cambridge Econometrics. So they are really modeling and assessing and analyzing what are the multiple benefits of energy efficiency, also from a more economic perspective. So please tell us about a bit more about the project tool referee and how can also be used by stakeholders in this interesting period of transposition.
Thank you, Ariana. If I could have the slides, I think is going to help quite a bit with the presentation. But in the meantime,
Brian, we should have the pointer left.
Right. This one is excellent. Thanks
Thank
a lot. So in the next 10 minutes or so, my goal will be to sort of pick up the challenge that was laid. So help you to raise awareness, make energy efficiency more sexy as a topic and help you make it more sexy, and help you do your homework. So when you go back to utility governments, to pressure groups, sort of have a way to discuss the impacts of energy efficiency. So let's go. So as Ariana said, I would like to have this a bit more interactive than just me speaking for 10 minutes, which is going to be a dreadful task. I do not wish it. I'm an economist, not the most fun people. So what are the multiple benefits of energy efficiency policies? Here we've already heard a bit on employment, skills, more ideas from the panel, or I'm very happy to hear any shouts from the audience for the next few minutes, please, Ariana.
Security and common first. I can go on.
Bills, the reduction, impact on GDP, GVA, and then a lot of things on environment, right? We have impacts on climate, on emissions, a lot of these things. So these are some of the things that we can get through the referee tool. So I'm going to get in a minute into details on what the referee tool is. But we can have some impacts of the policies on four main areas: industrial productivity, socioeconomic development, air quality and well-being, and environment and climate. What you see on the indicators column is the outputs that we can report on in terms of the impact, so the benefits of energy efficiency. You say, wait, these are not all the indicators of energy efficiency that we can get in terms of benefits, and you would be correct in that. We lack the data to continue more. So the first call and my request would be, we need more work on data availability. We need to better understand what the building stock, for instance, of the different member states is. We need to better understand how the energy bills of different people work in order to be able to model and understand what is the impact of policies on things that are so crucial to discussing the impact of energy efficiency. Now, in addition to the benefits of outputs that you can get through the tool, another thing that you can get access is some halfway, let's say, results, which are very important to discuss in terms of the impact of policy, in terms of the design of the policy, right? So on the first column category, we have the different models, so economic sectors that we explicitly model economic activities, so we can get specific results related to road transport, to household heating, to power sector, and heating processes within the manufacturing industry. So for all these things, we can get key information in terms of the impact of a policy with respect to its impact on the different technologies or fuels that are used within this sector. So this should be quite helpful thing for most of the policymakers in terms of kind of planning, right? So the next step of discussing the policies, what is the impact of my policy in terms of heat pumps? What is the impact of a policy in terms of gas consumption in the country? So these sort of intermediate results should paint a more complete picture in addition to the benefits that a given policy can give. How do you know? So I've heard since the beginning, quite a few people discuss about energy efficiency, its impacts. We discussed about employment. We already covered some of the benefits. How do you know that these are the benefits? I mean, does everyone here have access to some form of a tool or a simulation sort of unit? I think if I quickly check with a raise of hands, I think, so some of the consultancies, they expect they'll have, like Cambridge Econometrics has, then DigiGrow, I expect, Klima, IA, does the rest of the audience is able to simulate something like this? I think this is problematic, isn't it? The fact that we cannot discuss energy efficiency on an equal footing. Not everyone has access to something that, if it's not a perfect simulation, is a good enough simulation at least, that everyone can use, have it as a reference point, and discuss in a consistent way, taking into consideration the complexity of the network effects that an energy efficiency type of policy can have in the economy, and get the direction and the magnitude of the impacts as well as the type. So how we are going to do it and how the public is going to be able to do it. So basically, through the Horizon project that we're working on, Cambridge Econometrics, together in collaboration consortium of 6 more companies and institutions, we have developed a national level simulation tool, which sort of gives access to the public through an interface, 3 key models that we have been using at Cambridge Econometrics for a lot of the work that we do for the European Commission. So starting from the building stock model, which can simulate the impact of renovation policies for each country of the EU, to the FTT, so future technology transformation models that focus on specific industries, the ones that I just covered a few minutes ago. So we have transport, we have household heating, we have the power sector, we have manufacturing industries. And last, the E3ME. So the E3ME is a macroeconometric model that sort of takes the inputs of the other 2 to calculate which are the aggregate economic effects, macroeconomic effects, and report the multiple benefits that we covered just a few minutes ago. This toolkit is going to be accessible to to everyone in the EU, starting, well, internationally, since it's online, from June 2024, hopefully, when we have our launch event. More information will follow. Please follow us on Twitter. Small marketing parentheses. What are the things that you can simulate with this tool? So here we have some examples of the policy measures. As you can see, the small circle has a description of the different models that it is that we're using. And then the outer has a review of the different types of policies that any user can go to the interface and introduce to the tool to get its impact on the economy, on the member state of choice. Here important is to say that many of us that work in energy or in econ are able to take one of the policies and kind of track the causality effect, right? Like start saying, so the one is like A is going to affect B, C, D, but it gets more challenging when you build a policy package, and most of these things come as a package. So here, one of the key contributions of this tool is the fact that it can run a simulation of a policy package for a given country with multiple measures, essentially. So how do we make sure that this stays a relevant thing for many years to come? We express everything in terms of a benchmark comparison. The benchmark can be you reference scenario 2020, which is the thing that the European Commission is currently using as a common reference point of comparison. But this is not going to be great potentially in a few years. So we give the option to use it, to use as a benchmark, as a starting point, essentially, for the simulation. And in addition to this, by the latest policies that agreed at EU level, so things like the Energy Efficiency Directive or the Fit for 55 are included on this. And then to this, we can have the cost of the ETS2 or introduce an arbitrary X% increase to the fossil fuel prices to make sure that the world of the simulation resembles the world of today. And then finally, I sort of want to wrap up with a quote from John Stanek, the head of the environment team, which is really nice, I think, because it grasps the point that we are at the moment and where the discussions of the morning and also now are leading to, right? So we need more information in terms of the benefits. We already have a good understanding of the direction and of the level, and this kind of tool allows a lot of people, policymakers, people working in administration that have access to a simulation tool or not have access to run a simulation and see what is the impact of these type of policies. However, the next step is to move past the information, right? To move towards implementation. So what my co-panelist has also been calling quite a bit on is getting into our constituencies, the countries, the governments, and sort of aligning on how can we exactly implement the policies in a way that takes into account the heterogeneous type of investors and households that have. There's no such thing as the average household anymore, at least I think that's modern economics, the way we view it, and then take a good consideration the environmental and social constraints that we're facing, so that our policies should not have an adverse impact.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this interesting presentation. I take from there a tool in which the world of the simulation resembles the world of today. That would be great to have something adaptable, accessible, of which you can really measure impacts and benefits. Before we all fall asleep, because it's after lunchtime and I see the attention going down, I'd like to open the floor to the public. Whether you have questions for the four panelists or just one in particular. Alfie Cantan, please introduce yourself and from where you come from. And we can take also directly the question from Davide so that we can move on for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Quentin Delus from the European Copper Institute. First, I'd like to fully subscribe to what Julia said about the importance in the difficulty to have clean and affordable energy available, particularly electricity. But we'll be a bit more careful with the word abundant because it gives the impression we can waste it or that we have enough. So I think to have clean and affordable electricity available, we also need to pay a lot of attention to efficiency. Make sure that it can remain affordable. And that comes to the point that Brian made, that efficiency is super important to make it cost effective. And that's actually what matters the most in a clean energy system will be the peak demand more than the consumption. So we gave the example of the dishwasher. The consumption of the dishwasher is important, but if you can manage to use it when there is enough electricity available, that will be because the peak is impacting the cost of the price of the kilowatt hour. The peak consumption is the most costly. Something that is not always covered into the models. I think the benefits of efficiency, but come back maybe to a question you can make in your system. In your model, do you also quantify the benefits of reducing the peak demand on the price of the kilowatt hour? Usually, the Commission communicates the cost benefit of energy efficiency policies by just the cost saving of the energy you save, but not on the reduced cost for all the energy you consume. And that's a huge benefit that should be there. That's the question whether it's in your model for conventional dynamic. And then question to the others, because so far our indicator is of energy efficiency is the consumption, and there is still a lot to do on this for sure by 2030. So on a longer term, how can we better integrate this peak aspect and then the impact on the price into our thinking and policies? Because that's why we can have a stronger argument for efficiency and also stronger benefits.
Thank you. And we had.
Hello, I'm Davide Sabadini from the European Environmental Bureau, which is network of environmental organizations in Europe. I have a question for Brian and Julia, and particularly let me be the party pooper here a little bit. I think there's a difference between being a must-have and a good-to-have, particularly when you have shrinking resources or you have to make a call. Okay, so my understanding is that at the global scale, I understand also from perspective in IEA, but also within the, let's say, the decision being cooked at DG GROW when it comes to industrial policy. Energy efficiency is liked by everyone, but it's nobody's love. And that makes a big difference when you have to make a call when you put your money on. So it's good to know that it's a lot of talking and a lot of it's good, good. But then at the end of the day, are we going to invest in renewables that are more sexy? Are we going to have a specific policy or sector that is dedicated to energy efficiency as a sector, as a critical sector, as it will be renewables, as it will be other types of energy which are very needed for us to be independent in the future as the European Union, or not? It's going to be like confetti on the little cakes of the party. Well, that's the big difference to making choice, I believe.
Thanks. So I think we start with the very interesting questions about the price. It's not just the price. It's not just the energy efficiency. It's not just reducing cost, but also reducing the price of the kilowatt hour. Is that in your model? Firstly, and also more broadly, then how we can integrate for the other panelists really the crucial role of energy efficiency in reducing peak demand and to be a real resources for the energy system. That was the first question. And then we'll move to energy efficiencies, nobody's love, from Davide.
I think I asked the question very quick. So this is not included as part of the modeling. We're not able, so this version of the model does not have an explicit modeling the energy system in terms of this type of mechanics. So it does not consider for each member state.
Who else want to go?
I hope it works, yes. So you said that abundance is coherent with energy efficiency. Ideally not. So if you are twice more efficient, then you have double, basically you've doubled the energy. Energy is, perhaps I'm saying something awful, but my economists will hate, but basically energy is a means, is a tool. So you can produce the double with the same energy, yourself the double. Now, is this reasonable? And it comes back to what the comment, perhaps not so nice, I made. You know, I don't like to say cheap energy, I like to say affordable, because we have to think about what should we do. But ideally, energy should be unlimited. So all the progress we have in our societies is due to this illusion of unlimited energy. The thing it is not. So my son studies physics, so perhaps we get fusion, we get to scale it up. So I would say that the concept of abundant in its outcomes, you know, it's easy to say abundant, is something that is important, and that's why in this discussion I grasp not totally about peak, etc., is also being able to use energy when it's there and when it's actually cheap, sometimes zero cost, so not even the affordability. So that
It's secure and stable. I think that's
yes, but also ideally abundant, ideally unlimited, possible, but abundant for the needed. And now we get into philosophy, the idea, and obviously without negative effects for health, for environment, etc. That's why green and abundant is something that my bosses like to say, but I feel very good.
Does one of you want to comment as well on the philosophical question whether energy should be unlimited, ideally, or whether maybe we have as well decoupling shows that even with little energy we can do a lot?
I would like to bring back the energy efficiency into this discussion of what is, what are the opportunities in energy efficiency in making it more abundant. And also, I mean, we have heard how critical are the prices of energy for our industries. Well, the first effect that energy efficiency has is at macroeconomic level. Whether you shave off the peaks or not, if you demand less energy, you are at macroeconomic level lowering the prices. So that's already good for the industry. The second level is obviously at the company level. That's the sort of very obvious thing that if you consume less energy because of energy efficiency, you will pay less for the energy. But not only that, we have heard very importantly about the multiple benefits. And for companies, the multiple benefits, they are numerous. Productivity of the labor, productivity of the people is one important effect. Also, as you invest into energy efficiency, you typically invest into automatization, digitalization, modernization. So that goes sort of hand in hand, both together. And finally, and I think that's the most important, and that's the subject of this question, of this discussion, is the shift from energy efficiency as a sort of singular topic into system efficiency. Yeah. And that's where we enter with the energy efficiency first principle, which was this time in the Energy Efficiency Directive anchored in the legal basis for the first time in the law, and which actually requires us at any energy relevant situation to think of, could we use energy efficiency as an alternative solution to supply measures, to storage of energy and so on? Could we use energy efficiency as an alternative? And would it pay off from broader societal effect? Because obviously, if you're a singular investor, if you're an industrial undertaking. You will make your calculation in terms of costs and then what price you will save. But there, I think energy efficiency is asking us go beyond of that point of view of the singular investor. The public hand has to put some money on the table because there's public good in it. There's public good in energy efficiency. We have heard of environment, health issues, etc. I think I mean that's the next shift to be made. And just an anecdote. I was buying a dishwasher recently. I couldn't find a dishwasher that would load the timing of the peak depending on some sort of internet data coming into the dishwasher. When is the electricity abundant and when is it cheap? I don't know if it exists. I hope it exists, but I would like to see it in every supermarket and everywhere. I mean, if any of you represent here the producers, let's stop speak about these theoretical opportunities. Let's put them on the market.
So rather, in Australia, you cannot sell a dishwasher that doesn't have that capability. So you should pass a law. This could be regulated for. And in fact, the schemes in Australia don't even exist yet. The pricing and the response mechanisms aren't in place. But when they are put in place, 2/3 of the dishwasher stock will already have the chip in it that makes that possible. So this starts with regulation. I totally take the point about I do think the concept of energy efficiency is changing quite fundamentally because of time, because of flexibility, the flexibility required for grids of the future, which are going to be much more dynamic, driven by variable renewables, very different dynamics around when power is cheap, when it's clean, when it's available. We're already seeing, all know the classic kind of duck curve shape of electricity demand. That you're going to have to think of new animal names. They don't look like ducks anymore. They've got 2 humps. They've got 3 humps. In Delhi, there's now a mini peak in the afternoon around 3 o'clock because school children come home and turn on the air conditioners. 5 years ago, 10%, less than 10% of Delhi citizens owned air conditioners. Now more than 30% do. But meanwhile, solar is penetrating, and it's available at 2 o'clock, but not 3 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock, but not 5 o'clock. It's getting much more dynamic, and that's where digital technologies are really going to make a difference. And it does call for changes in analytic thinking on that. Just to come to the point about how we talk about energy efficiency. Obviously, we discussed it a lot, and people in energy efficiency, Erasmus called us midfielders earlier, and I know enough about soccer to know that midfielders aren't normally the poster on the bedroom wall. That's usually the guys who go to goals. And we like to think we set up the goals, and we feel we don't get maybe fated enough. But I think that is true to a certain degree, and I think it matters in certain places, but not in others. And the example I was certainly using is it matters this year because there's only a certain amount of political airtime. 4 minutes now in COP, and it is the natural tendency that efficiency will get less of that airtime because of the nature of the topic compared to something more direct, intangible, and sexy, whatever you want to call it. So that's a risk. But more generally, I don't think it matters because 99.9% of all decisions that determine energy efficiency don't mention energy efficiency or don't have any psychological connection with energy efficiency because it's when you buy a dishwasher. Nobody, well, maybe you do, Radish, and I probably do, but nobody else who goes to the shop says, I want an energy efficient one. They say, I want a nice one that's not too expensive to buy, and I certainly like one that's cheaper to run. So if that one's cheaper to run than that one, I'll buy it. They use different language, I think, in different ways. And industry is the same. Some industry will maybe use the term more, but they're really talking about cost reduction or better operational performance or different metrics like that. And I think that's fine. I don't want to live in a world where everybody turns up in the bar and says, let's talk about energy efficiency. But I think those implicit decisions are more powerful than maybe we think because again, it's about visibility here. But if you treat energy efficiency truly as a fuel and you look over the last 2 decades, last 1 decade, energy efficiency has made a bigger contribution to emissions reduction than renewables has, than anything else has. That's a single technology. And we forget that sometimes. It's that lack of visibility that does matter sometimes. But I still think out on the ground, things are going in the right direction. And the question is, what are the policy interventions at certain times that will really make a difference? And I think Europe has a lot to be very proud of in terms of what it has achieved in terms of setting. Everybody certainly now is the time to go faster.
Thank you. Very clear, Brian. Someone wants to comment on the last questions of David. Otherwise, I have a comment or a remark from Monica from the floor as well. Yes, please.
Add something on love. Yeah, you don't want to be talking about energy efficiency. I think you have to find ways for people to talk about it. I remember a conversation with my parents trying to explain to them that changing their fridge was a good deal because of it felt so old. And for them, it was an incredible waste. And it's true that throwing away a fridge that's perfectly functioning, even only for money, because my father was an engineer, you could totally see it was eventually cheaper to change. So I think there should be some work on perhaps not energy efficiency, but on life. And I know the environment has some of that. The cost of the life of the cycle of the device, and bring that instead of the energy efficient out there. Now, lack of love, yes, like single market. Everybody loves the single market, nobody cares, except when it collapses. And I think what happened last winter, and I hope it won't happen again, people freezing at home, made people think and doing these calculations, because I totally understand why my parents think throwing away the fridge is a waste, even though my father can calculate it. But it's a conversation we need to have, and it's an important one. But love, no, well, it's not sexy. It's not sexy. We work in non-sexy areas, but very important areas. We cannot do without the single market, you know. But do we do without single market at home in the evening? No, my husband refuses.
But then, sorry, I'm going to pass you immediately to Monica, but I have a follow-up question. But so we see that the President von der Leyen has started her clean energy transition dialogues, like to discuss with industry how to advance. Is there a clean energy transition dialogue for energy efficiency? And Monica, I'll pass you the floor.
As I said before, this is an initiative of the President, so Digital obviously is very much involved, but the agenda is set by the President. So again, you said, go around and speak about make it sexy if you manage, or if not, make it unavoidable. One thing the President made unavoidable is to talk about implementation. And that's why she has this balance at her level, because she says it's all very good to legislate, now we have to implement. Implementation, you are key in implementation. Implementation was never sexy. It's been 27 years in the coalition, was never sexy. She is making it sexy. So it can be done, difficult, but you have to come and, what was said, just go to the sectors and explain you can help them make this work. This is the whole point of the dialogue. How can we make this work?
Action point or homework for industry members around the panel, around the floor and online. Go and speak to try to have a clean energy access, energy transition dialogue, and make your voice heard. Monica.
So first of all, about this thing of, first of all, I tried to buy a couple of one fridge myself, and what I found out with my complete surprise is that it's very difficult to find a category fridge unless it's huge, and that is really bad in the sense that that of course it makes it, for me working on energy efficiency since more than 10 years, I had to adjust to a smaller category, which I really felt awful, I must tell you. So there is an issue of kind of products that are offered, and I actually must say that more and more this category of saving energy is coming. You know, even in my country, Italy, when till very recently, you had very little, even advertisement on the television that had to do with environmental or saving or energy issue. Even there, there are more and more of this kind of understanding that we have to go in that direction. But it is true that the availability of products is still not there, and it is, of course, a push for the industry also to produce those kind of products. But what I wanted to say is there are two things. First, this question about sexy. I must say I don't agree. Because the most important thing about energy efficiency, and we saw it very much in the good and in the bad, with the super bonus conversation in Italy, can become extremely sexy as soon as you make it, let's say, available, clear. Even, you know, the person who comes to help my mother to clean knew about this bonus, okay? And found it sexy. Okay. Of course, there are many issues about this. I don't want to enter, but I just wanted to say that the way in which it's built and the way in which it is explained has a lot to do with the way in which this kind of arguments are actually given and brought about. And I think that we did make a lot of progress if I compare the situation as it was 10 years ago, where basically the conversation was, if I save energy, I destroy GDP. I mean, I reduce the amount of energy economic activity, and therefore it's bad for the economy. You know, even this is a bit overcome since quite some time, and I think that the European Union is a lot that, and also the different business that really understood that that was the way to go, but also consumers. And we saw today, this morning, Monique was there. I remember the first conversations we had with consumers, completely against every kind of improvement in this kind of efficiency above in houses, but not only, because it would become more costly. And this is exactly, by the way, the argument that are used, the house owners associations are using to basically destroy the EPBD and the building directive. So I think that it is really, and it is not a problem, a question of communication only. It's a question of regulation, and it's a question of availability of relatively easy instruments in order to be able to realize these policies. And of course, energy efficiency, differently from renewables, needs a lot of people around. In this sense, it's more democratic, because you need local authorities, you need citizens, you need companies, you need government, you need European Union, and blah, blah, blah. But I think I really would argue that this question of sexy or not sexy is probably something that we should, and I'm sure you all agree with me, overcome. And by the way, I've always found single market extremely sexy. I remember that when I was green and I first met Commissioner Monti and also the other commissioners, we lost. But in any case, for any kind of green transition, for any kind of green policy, you need to have a functioning single market, because otherwise the bad one will always win. And of course, a single market according to certain principles and according to certain priorities that are green priorities. Obviously, because if you have how do you say, Mr. level playing field, yeah, which is the same for I don't know, renewables and for fossils, then that's not good. No, and I believe that now, for the moment, the one of, and this is what I wanted to ask, and I finish, to you, Julia. For me, one of the biggest threats to the green transition is exactly what's going on in terms of state aid. The fact that you have some countries that are able to do, because they have fiscal availability, they have money basically, they can actually go in the direction of giving money to their companies, their industry, not considering how green they are. They can be the greenest in the world. But if they enter into a competition with other countries and with other industry in Europe, because they have the possibility of taking profit of national state aid, then the whole competitive advantage of the European Union as such in the green transition is destroyed. Of course, I understand that there is a big political problem because of this issue of not having another next generation EU, let's say, put in practice. But I think that this also for us, for our community, is a real fight, because it is one, at least according to me, but maybe you can say that it's not true, that one of the biggest threats also for green transition is this renationalization, let's say, of state aid, but also of this, and which is also posing a big threat on the single market. Maybe I'm a bit too worried, and I hope that you can reassure me.
I cannot totally reassure you. So we think this boom in state aids is due to temporary framework allowing state aids. So the line of the Commission stays the same. State aids, indiscriminate state aids, just have the risk of fragmenting the internal market. But it is true that a number of personalities, including Mario Monti, including Enrico Coletta, and a number of member states, criticized this boom of linked to green transition state aids because only some countries can afford, but it's not only that. There are countries that can afford, but it's just not their way of doing industrial policy. Yeah? The Scandinavian countries, they could afford theoretically, fiscally, but they are not doing it. And so these dangers do exist, and what is important is the balance. In every temporary framework for state aids, what is important is the balance. And a lot of attention is on that, there are evaluations going on, and it's very much watched. And it's important that the constituency also looks at it and looks at the effect of it on your ecosystem, because we need this feedback and we need this data. It is linked to budgetary tools, so if you cannot use the tool, and it is linked also to the capacity or not of member states to engage in common projects, European projects. So with the IPCEI is important projects of European economic interest are in their infancy. It is also a state aid legislation, but in a way it's the way. Is the way to have state aid, yes, but towards European projects that benefit. That's why common European interest is so important. So I guess that on both IPCIs and on the temporary framework, criticism is obviously good, but also very much welcome, because we need to get the right balance. But it is true that right now, if we do not promote investment for the green transition, well, it's not happening. Yeah? In spite of all the good work you people here are doing. So we need regulation, and the president said it 2 days ago, we need regulation, we need investments, and we need trade policy. And perhaps state aid policy.
Thank you very much. I think we are at the end of the session. Can you confirm that?
Yes.
Yes.
We have one question on chat, maybe.
We have one question on the chat, then I'd like to take it. Can you read it aloud?
So it's for Ms. Brenna and Mr. Lorenzo. In the scenarios used by the Commission, are the energy efficient improvements in industry enough to compensate increase in energy consumption due to relocation of industries in Europe, as this is another EU objective 15-year carbon border objective?
That's a very technical question. It sounds like one for the modeler. But if I understood it well, the question was about relocating towards Europe, and therefore we will need more workforce.
More energy consumption.
And more energy consumption. If you look at the long-term models, yeah, for the Green Deal and for the decarbonization, there is actually quite an increase in energy consumption, but coming towards the end of that period before 2050, yeah. And that increase goes mostly into energy. So, I mean, what we are looking at and what we are looking before is some sort of a realistic model based on the assumptions. Yeah. It was not, well, at the time that it was constructed, it was not counting on an abrupt sort of take back into Europe of the heavy industry, which, yeah, that was not necessarily modeled. but there is, I mean, we do count with an increase in energy consumption in long term, not necessarily in short term, and especially in electricity.
Thanks for this and for answering. I guess we can close the panel. We had a very rich full discussion. We had a lot of, say, tagline that we could all use in Twitter/X, as we call it today, that we need more love for energy efficiency. As Brian said, what is coming is the golden era for energy efficiency and the golden era for energy efficient businesses. We also heard from Monica that energy efficiency is much demographic, but more seriously, I think as an energy efficiency community, we had an appeal from the panelists on different angles. One, to go and talk to your governments to make sure that an energy efficiency global target will be agreed at the COP next month, but also an appeal from others to go and provide your solutions to the energy agency, to the local authorities, to your government to make sure that energy efficiency is possible. That's, I think, are my key takeaways of the panel, but I will leave you a final round, final word, a final thought, a key takeaway or something you would like to say goodbye to our panel.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the takeaway, the main thing I think to raise at this point is that we sort of, I think we can all align on the fact that the benefits are there in terms of time, in terms of magnitude, but it's time to focus on implementation and take on inspiration.
Well, I want to just add that energy is life. So what you do, even if not sexy, difficult, etc., is very important because it's more life.
Julia was suggesting, although we don't necessarily have a big head for energy efficiency industry under the new legislation, it is as a grassroots in every of the parts, in every of the chapter. And I would like that is sort of the leading motto of the energy efficiency first. Yeah, let's be it everywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, a lot of implementation, a lot of investment, a lot of delivery. Final word, opportunity.
And clap and for the final.